What happens a shamed and advantaged celebrity thinks they can ascendancy a backward night allocution show? Tonight, we dive into one of the best atomic interviews in television history. A guest's abandoned behavior led to article unprecedented. You're about to attest in how a simple catechism about alms works coiled into a complete accident with accusations aerial and a host pushed to his complete limit. This is the adventure of how one account went from affable babble to absolute adversity. In beneath 20 minutes. Accomplish abiding to subscribe and be the animate version beneath because this one will leave you speechless. The backward appearance flat bashed with its accepted pre-taping energy. Stephen Colbert sat abaft his board reviewing his addendum one final time. His producers had abreast him thoroughly about tonight's guest, a loft aristocratic who had congenital, a media authority on altercation and anxiously crafted victim narratives. The admirers was already seated, cameras positioned, and the accustomed affair music accessible to roll. Ladies and gentlemen, amuse acceptable Meghan Markle, Colbert. Appear with his brand beam as the flat admirers erupted in affable applause. She absolved assimilate the date acid in affected atramentous dress, her smile accomplished and camera ready. The handshake was brief, the pleasantries minimal. Great to accept you here, Cor said as they acclimatized into their chairs. Aye. Except to say you've been absolutely active afresh with your assorted projects. Thank you for accepting me, Stephen. Yes, it's been an absurd adventure of beforehand and authenticity, she replied, her articulation accustomed that accustomed accent of apposite sincerity. Colbert leaned advanced slightly. Let's alpha with article your admirers are analytical about. Your contempo alms assignment has been accepting attention, but some critics accept a secular out that actual little of the money aloft absolutely alcove the advised recipients. Can you airing us through how your foundation operates? The catechism. Afraid in the air for a moment. Meghan's smile faltered about imperceptibly, but she bound recovered. Stephen, I anticipate there's been some misinformation circulating. What we do is actualize acceptable change, not aloof bandy money at problems. But the banking letter's appearance that over 70% of donations go to authoritative costs and salaries. That's decidedly college than best acclaimed charities, Colbert pressed, his announcer instincts blame in. I'm not actuality to altercate centralized banking matters, Meghan replied, her articulation demography on a bluff edge. I'm actuality to allocution about the absolute appulse we're authoritative in communities about the world. The flat admirers began to faculty the tension. Cor glanced at his notes, afresh looked ashamed at her. I understand, but accuracy. Is important ashamed your allurement the accessible for donations? Surely you can explain why such a ample allotment goes to overhead. What I can't explain is that you're acutely aggravating to ambuscade me with antic questions. Meghan snapped. Her accord alpha to crack? This isn't journalism. It's a hit job. Cor's eyebrows aloft slightly. I'm sorry, but allurement about accessible banking advice isn't an ambush. It's an accepted catechism that your donors deserve an acknowledgement to. My donors? These aren't my donors, Stephen. These are bodies who accept in creating elusive change, not agriculture into abridged narratives. She attempted back, her articulation rising. The numbers appear from your own tax filings, not tabloids, Colbert replied calmly. But let's move on. You've been articulate about aloofness rights, yet you've done abundant interviews, podcasts and documentaries, administration, actual claimed capacity about your life. How do you accommodate absent aloofness while accompanying allure publicity? Meghan's face flushed. Are you actively allurement me that afterwards aggregate I've been through? The harassment, the racism, the complete abridgment of abutment from institutions that should accept adequate me. I'm allurement about the credible bucking amid claiming to appetite aloofness while actively gluttonous media attention, Colbert said, his accent actual able but firm. There's no bucking ashamed you're aggravating to actual lies and misinformation, she replied, her articulation acceptable added agitated. When bodies are overextension apocryphal narratives about you, you accept the albatross to set the almanac straight. But some of the capacity you've aggregate assume absolutely personal, things that go aloft acclamation misinformation. For instance, your Contempo podcast adventure about affectionate conversations with ancestors members. Those weren't affectionate conversations. They were examples of the systemic issues I was ambidextrous with, Meghan protested, her easily gesturing. Added emphatically, Obeer nodded slowly. Okay, let's allocution about those systemic issues. You've fabricated some appealing, austere allegations about the aristocratic family, including claims about racism and abridgment of support, but ashamed. Apprentice for specific examples or evidence you generally allege in generalities. Can you accord us accurate examples? I've accustomed affluence of examples, Meghan said, her articulation demography on an arresting tone. The botheration is that bodies don't appetite to apprehend the truth. They appetite to assure an academy that has credible its accurate colors. What specific adventure of racism occurred? Who said what to whom? Cor asked directly. Meghan paused, her jaw tightening. I'm not activity to echo conversations that were meant to be private. But you've already discussed them about in added interviews, Colbert a secular out. You've fabricated these allegations, the centerpiece of your narrative. Surely you can accommodate capacity to abutment such austere claims. I don't accept to prove annihilation to you or anyone else. Meghan replied, her articulation assent again. The actuality that you're alike analytic this shows absolutely the affectionate of bent I'm talking about. The flat admirers was absolutely bashful now. Analysis. The account was ambageous out of control. Cor maintained his composure, but his announcement showed he was not activity to a shame down. I'm not analytic your experiences. I'm allurement for specifics about claims that accept had cogent a pulse on accessible assessment about the aristocratic family. He said that's not bias, that's basal journalism. Basal journalism? Meghan laughed bitterly. This is absolutely what I'm talking about. You accompany me on your appearance beneath apocryphal pretenses, afresh beforehand me with loaded questions, advised to accomplish me attending bad. The questions were submitted to your aggregation in advance, Colbert replied. Your arranger accustomed this band of questioning. My arranger never accustomed this ambush. Meghan attempt back, her articulation acceptable added hostile. This is absolutely inappropriate and unprofessional. The restriction in the flat was credible as the account connected to deteriorate ambiance. The date for an alike added atomic confrontation. Cor took a abysmal breath, acutely aggravating to achieve ascendancy of the rapidly breakable situation. Look, I anticipate we can both exceed that this chat has gotten added acrimonious than intended. Let's try to displace and focus on your accepted projects. No, Stephen, we can't aloof reset, Meghan replied, her articulation decrepit with indignation. You've already credible your accurate intentions. This absolute account has been advised to discredit me from the moment I absolved out here. That's artlessly not true, Colbert said firmly. These are accepted questions that any accessible amount would be asked. Abnormally addition who has fabricated such cogent accessible statements? Standard questions? Meghan's articulation pitched higher. You're alleviative me like a bent actor instead of a bedfellow on your show. This is adverse and absolutely unprofessional. The flat admirers exchanged afflictive glances. Some began, alive in their seats, acutely analysis, this was clashing any account they had witnessed before. The cameras connected, rolling, capturing every moment of the ascent confrontation. I'm alleviative you like addition who has fabricated austere accessible allegations and allurement you to actualize them. Cor replied, his backbone acutely acid thin. Let's try a altered approach. You appear abundantly about your brainy bloom. Struggles during your time in the aristocratic family. You mentioned activity suicidal. That's acutely a actual austere claim. Are you analytic my brainy bloom struggles now? Meghan interrupted, her eyes aflame with anger. Are you absolutely activity? To sit there in advance I was lying about advertent. Suicide? I'm not suggesting anything, Colbert said calmly. I'm allurement about the timeline and the advice you sought. You said you asked for advice but were denied? Who accurately did you ask? What affectionate of advice did you request? Asked the institution, the bodies who were declared to assure me, Meghan replied vaguely. I went to HR, I went to chief agents members, but the Alcazar has declared that they accept no almanac of any academic appeal for Brainy Bloom support. Colbert pressed. They've said that had such an appeal been made, it would accept been a non-addressed. Of course they would say that, Meghan scoffed. Their attention themselves. They're not activity to accept a bootless edition who is errand out for help. So your adage they're lying? Cor asked directly. An adage their attention an academy that has credible it cares added about its angel than the bot is oral it. Meghan deflected. That's not an acknowledgement to my question, Colbert acicular out. Did you accomplish academic requests for Brainy Bloom support? And if so, to whom specifically? Meghan's face wrined. I don't accept to accommodate you with the abundant breakdown of my everyman moments to amuse your curiosity, Stephen. The actuality that you're alike allurement these questions shows a complete abridgment of empathy. I'm allurement these questions. Because Brainy Bloom is an austere affair, and if institutions are declining bodies who charge help, that's important, Cor replied. But if your activity to accomplish such austere allegations publicly, bodies deserve to apperceive the specifics. Bodies deserve to apperceive that I was adversity and no one helped me. Meghan attempt back, that should be enough. The actuality that you charge added affidavit shows absolutely the affectionate of skepticism that prevents bodies from speaking out. It's not skepticism, it's journalism, Colbert said, his articulation demography on a harder edge. A shamed edition makes claims. That accident reputations in institutions, those claims charged to be substantiated. Accident reputations? Meghan's articulation accomplished a new pitch. What about the accident to my reputation? What about the years of racist attacks and aggravation I endured while they did annihilation to assure me? Let's allocution about those racist attacks, Colbert said, aptitude forward. You fabricated actual austere allegations about racist comments from ancestors members? Can you acquaint us accurately what was said and who said it? I've already addressed this in antecedent interviews, Meghan replied evasively. Actually, you haven't, Colbert countered. You've alluded to conversations about your son's bark color, but you've never defined who fabricated these comments or what absolutely was said. Because I'm aggravating to assure people alike bodies who didn't assure me, Meghan said. Her articulation acceptable added agitated. But you've already damaged those bodies by authoritative the allegations public, Colbert acicular out. If your activity to accomplish such austere claims, don't you anticipate you owe it to anybody complex to be specific? I don't owe anyone anything, Meghan snapped. I've been through abundant after accepting to absolve every detail of my agony to amuse your charge for an antic moment. This isn't about antic moments, Colbert replied, his accord alpha to crack. This is about accuracy and accountability. You've fabricated allegations that accept had austere after effects for bodies and institutions. You can't aloof accomplish ambiguous claims and a fresh debris to accommodate capacity ashamed questioned. I can do whatever I want, Meghan said defiantly. I don't acknowledgement to you or anyone else. I've told my accuracy and that's enough. Your truth, Colbert's eyebrows attempt up. There's alone one truth, and if you're not accommodating to accommodate specifics about these austere allegations, afresh maybe they shouldn't accept been fabricated accessible in the aboriginal place. How cartel you, Meghan said, her articulation afraid with anger. How cartel you advanced that I shouldn't accept a peer out about the racism and corruption I experienced. You accept no abstraction what I went through. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't allege out, Colbert replied firmly. I'm suggesting that if your activity to accomplish austere allegations, you should be able to ashame them up with specifics. I don't accept to ashamed up annihilation to you, Meghan attempt back. The actuality that your ambitious affidavit of my agony shows absolutely the affectionate of victim-blaming mentality that keeps bodies silent. I'm not victim-blaming, Cor said, his articulation assent slightly. I'm allurement for the aforementioned akin of accountability that any accessible amount would be accepted to accommodate ashamed, authoritative, austere allegations. Any accessible figure, Meghan laughed bitterly. You beggarly any atramentous woman. Who dares to allege out to join able white institutions, right? Because that's what this is absolutely about. The flat fell into abashed silence. Alike the assembly aggregation seemed taken ashamed by the administration the account had taken. Colbert stared at her for a moment, acutely processing what she had aloof said. That's absolutely inappropriate, he said finally. You're now suggesting that my questions are racially motivated, which is both arbitrary and untrue. Is it? Meghan challenged. Would you be a white woman this aggressively about her brainy bloom struggles and adventures with racism? I would ask the aforementioned questions of anyone who fabricated such austere accessible allegations, Cor replied firmly. Chase has annihilation to do with it. Aggregate has to do with Chase ashamed you're a atramentous woman speaking accuracy to power. Meghan attempt back, but you wouldn't accept that, would you? The restriction in the flat had accomplished a breaking point with both host and bedfellow acutely aloft any achievement of civilian discourse. The flat atmosphere was electric with tension. Cor's face had hardened, his accepted, affable address absolutely replaced by almost independent frustration. The admirers sat in abashed silence, witnessing what was acutely an aberrant breakdown of a backward night interview. I charge to stop you appropriate there, Kohler said, his articulation acid through the restriction like a blade. You aloof allege me of ancestral bent for allurement accepted journalistic questions. That's absolutely out of band and frankly it's insulting. Meghan's articulation absurd with indignation. What's calumniating is actuality brought on appearance beneath, apocryphal pretenses and a fresh actuality subjected to this interrogation. You're aggravating to breach me bottomward because you can't handle a able atramentous woman speaking her truth. This has annihilation to do with your chase or your strength, Colbert replied, his backbone acutely exhausted. This has to do with your abnegation to accommodate basal analysis for austere allegations you fabricated publicly. That's not strength, that's deflection. Meghan stood up abruptly, her armchair braiding adjoin the floor. I'm not deflecting anything. I'm abnegation to be afraid by addition who acutely has an agenda. The alone calendar actuality is accepting honest answers to honest questions. Colbert said, actual seated, but his articulation growing firmer. Article you assume Butterfingers of providing. I don't accept to accommodate you with anything. Meghan attempt back, her articulation alveolate through the studio. I came actuality in acceptable faith, and you've angry this into a witch hunt. Acceptable faith? Colbert's articulation rose. You've accused me of ancestral bias, questioned my professionalism, and banned to acknowledgement basal questions about claims you've fabricated publicly. That's not acceptable faith. That's manipulation. Meghan's eyes beamed dangerously. You appetite to allocution about manipulation? Let's allocution about how you've edited this account to accomplish me attending bad. Let's allocution about how you've affected every catechism to cruise me up. This is a live taping, Colbert said incredulously. Nothing has been edited. Aggregate you've said and done has been in advance of this audience. That's absolutely what addition within calendar would say, Meghan replied, her articulation. Acceptable added erratic. You've allegedly accomplished this admirers to acknowledge a assertive way. The admirers' associates looked about at anniversary added in abashing and disbelief. Some began murmuring, acutely afflictive with the administration. The account had taken. Few befuddled their active, incredible disappointment. Are you actively suggesting that I've manipulated my audience? Kohler asked, his articulation abounding with disbelief. You're now advancing not aloof me, but the candor of this absolute. Appearance and anybody in it? I'm advertisement the accuracy about how the media works, Meghan declared, her articulation accustomed to berserk edge. This is absolutely what I've been talking about. This is the affectionate of analysis that collection. Me to contemplate suicide. Don't you dare, Colbert said sharply, his articulation acid through her dramatics. Don't you cartel use brainy bloom as a weapon to abstain accountability? That's not aloof inappropriate, it's dangerous. Dangerous? Meghan laughed harshly. What's alarming is bringing addition on your appearance and a fresh ambushing them, with adverse questions advised to accomplish them attending unstable. The alone actuality authoritative you attending ambiguous is you, Colbert replied bluntly. Your behavior tonight has been absolutely inappropriate, and bluntly it's been revealing. Absolute of what? Meghan challenged, her articulation decrepit with hostility. Absolute of addition who can't handle actuality asked to ashamed up their claims with facts. Colbert said, his journalistic instincts absolutely engaged. Addition who anon plays victim ashamed challenged. Addition who uses chase as a absorber. Ashamed questioned. And addition who allegedly thinks they're aloft the basal standards of accountability that administer to anybody else. How cartel you psychoanalyze me, Meghan seethed. You don't apperceive annihilation about me or what I've been through. I apperceive what you've told the public, Cor replied steadily. And I apperceive that ashamed asked to accommodate specifics. About those claims, you've deflected, attacked, and fabricated bottomless accusations adjoin me and this show. Baseless? Meghan's articulation accomplished an acute pitch. Aggregate, I've said tonight, has been absolutely justified. You've been adverse and amateurish from the moment I sat down. I've been able throughout this absolute interview, Colbert replied. Firmly, I've asked fair questions. I've accustomed you assorted opportunities to analyze your statements, and I've maintained my accord admitting your added aberrant behavior. Aberrant behavior? Meghan confused afterpiece to his desk, her articulation. Acceptable added agitated. You anticipate arresting myself adjoin your attacks as erratic? I anticipate accusing me of ancestral bias, analytic the candor of my show, suggesting I've manipulated my audience. And abnegation to acknowledgement basal questions about your accessible statements is erratic. Yes, Kohler replied. Not abetment. Down. Then maybe this account is over, Meghan declared, starting to abolish her microphone. Maybe it is, Colbert agreed, his articulation calm but firm. But afore you go, I appetite to be bright about something. You came on this appearance to advance your projects and allotment your story. Instead, you've credible admirers absolutely who you are ashamed challenged. You've been defensive, hostile, and dishonest. You've fabricated austere allegations that you banned to substantiate. And ashamed apprenticed for basal accountability, you've resorted to claimed attacks and arena victim. I'm not arena victim, Meghan protested weakly, her blowing alpha to crumble. You've abhorrent me, my show, my audience, and a like association as accomplished for your disability to acknowledgement simple questions, Colbert continued. That's not strength, that's weakness, that's not truthfulling. That's deflection. And frankly, it's calumniating to absolute victims of racism and abuse. You accept no appropriate to adjudicator me, Meghan said, her articulation breaking slightly. I accept every appropriate to adjudicator your behavior on my show, Colbert replied. And your behavior tonight has been absolutely unacceptable. You've credible a complete abridgment of account for this platform, for me, and for the admirers that came actuality to apprehend honest conversation. This chat is over, Meghan announced, affairs off her microphone and bottom-worded on the chair. Yes, it is. Cor agreed, axis to face the camera as she stormed against the exit. Ladies and gentlemen, that was declared to be an account about accepted projects and accommodating work. Instead, you witnessed article aberrant in television history. The admirers remained silent, still processing what they had aloof witnessed. As Meghan abolished backstage, Cor befuddled his arch and looked anon into the camera. I've been accomplishing this for a continued time, and I've never had a bedfellow behave that way. We asked boxy questions here, but we asked them adequately and with respect. What you saw tonight was addition who artlessly couldn't handle actuality, captivated answerable for their own words and actions. The flat remained eerily quiet as the implications of what had aloof transpired began to bore in. The account that was declared to adjust an accessible angel had instead appeared the accurate appearance of addition who claimed to best accuracy and authenticity. That's the complete adventure of one of the best atomic interviews in television history. What did you anticipate about the way this bedfellow handled the pressure? Beat a animadversion beneath, and let me apperceive if you anticipate the host was fair or too aggressive, and if you appetite to see added breakdowns of arguable interviews and celebrity meltdowns. Accomplish abiding to subscribe and hit that notification bell.